Hello, listeners. This is Eric Berry from Sporkman Studios. Here with me is Angelo Panetta and Tom Deere, the creators of the indie comic Agent 1.22. How are you doing, guys?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Eric.
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Just a quick question. Uh, do you guys usually refer to it as Agent 122, or do you put the point in there?
We say Agent 122.
Okay. So I met you guys at Baltimore Comic Con this year, and you had was it 3 issues
Mm-hmm.
out?
Yeah, zero,
And
one, and two.
I picked those up, and one thing that really drew me to it was the art, which I thought was really striking, and also the character design was great. So I picked it up. I read them a couple days after that. Really enjoyed it. Would like to see where it's going. Tell us a little bit about Agent 1.22.
Sure. Well, it's a digitally painted science fiction epic saga, if we can use those big words to describe our story. And it's about a cyborg operative named Agent 122, or her designation is Agent 122. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know where she came from, and she has no memories. So every time she's needed for a mission, which is she's owned and operated by the agency, she's literally thought out, given enough memories to go on an extraordinarily dangerous mission. Right now, she's tasked with finding out why the Tempest virus is ravaging the outer colonies. She goes back to the Mnemosyne, which means memory, which is not a coincidence, which is the name of the mothership that she operates out of, which is run by the AI Mnemosyne. And then she's debriefed. If she did a good job, she gets her teddy bear. And if she didn't, she doesn't. And then they mind wipe her, freeze her, stick her in the locker, and that's her life until it isn't anymore.
Yeah, I definitely like the touch of the teddy bear and just the interesting look of it with her a gun in one hand, something violent, and in the other hand something uh, you know that obviously she has some sort of emotional attachment to that is tender.
The teddy bear is funny because that is the epitome of how we as a team have developed Agent 122. So I wrote that original, 9-page script like in 2006 or whenever. And when I had her put in the cryo slumber chamber, I gave her a teddy bear. And then Angelo said, "Why does she have a teddy bear?" And I said, "I don't know." And David said, "I know why she has a teddy bear." And he gave us the answer. That right there is, in a nutshell, how we've been able to make Agent 122 the compelling story that it is because of that relationship that we developed as creators.
Cool. I looked at your website, and what I find really fascinating is how this whole project came about. Um, because it didn't seem to be the typical comic book backstory where someone says, "I want to make a comic book," and they go out and they create a comic book. Uh, the background on this was rather interesting because neither of you guys are really comic guys, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about it because it says that this actually started out as an animation project.
Right. So, boy, back in the early 2000s, I was working in an animation studio. So Tom and I, we actually have other creative jobs besides Agent 122. So I score music and do sound design for films and animation. And Tom, he can talk more about his career as a voiceover artist and voices video games and toys. But he can speak to that in a second. So I was on the troll of the internet trying to hook up with a video animator to do some more sophisticated, adult-oriented animation. I love the Final Fantasy style of artwork, and I really wanted to do some music and stuff. So I found David Martin, who's our third partner. He actually had this character, Agent 122, and I offered to write some music or do some stuff, and he said, "Well, why don't we just write something original for it? And I said, okay, great. I have somebody I know. So I called Tom to ask him if he would contribute to the story. And then he can tell you what happened when I talked to him.
So by trade, I am a voice talent. Angelo and I met over 20 years ago when I cut my first commercial demo at his studio. And then he brought me in over the years to work on his sci-fi radio drama. He's the co-creator of the Radio Repertory Company of America, where he uses great talent like Claudia Christian and Patricia Tallman from Babylon 5 to be the hero and villain of his sci-fi radio drama series. But I have some writing experience too. I was developing a TV show on my own, and Angelo, helped me produce shooting some scenes for it. And so when he came to me and said he's got a writing assignment for me, which he's done before over the years for this and that, and he showed me the test renders, the animatics that David had posted on YouTube of Agent 122, just kind of running around, flipping and jumping and doing stuff. And they gave me a one-page outline saying, write something about 2.5 minutes long, just a short little quickie adventure about this very basic outline. Within a few days, I had written a 9-page story, and David and Angelo, they really liked it. So we decided to create an animated web series. So I wrote 20 episodes, each 4.5 minutes long. Yep. 4.5 minutes long. So each had a 1 and a 2. So it's basically 10 episodes of 9 minutes each with an act 1 and an act 2. That very first writing assignment, that 9-page long thing, is basically, it's almost exactly issue 0.
You guys were sort of developing an IP in a way, and that comic books was just an outlet to start showcasing that IP, which was very interesting to me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because we're in the business. We're not in the business of selling comic books. We're in the business of building a franchise, and we discovered that comic books is the perfect storytelling mechanism to get Agent 122 out into the world.
Well, it really is a good idea too. I had actually mentioned this on one of the podcasts I was on, and I was saying about the great thing about the comics medium versus something like a movie is, yes, it can be labor intensive and everything to do a comic, but nowhere near what it is a movie, and the budgets are obviously vastly different. So it's a lot harder to sell a script. If you were a script writer and said, I want to write a movie and get that sold so a really cool movie can be done, that's a lot more difficult. And in most cases, you don't have your own finances where you can afford to do that. But as a storyteller, even if you think in cinematic terms and you say, well, I have this really cool idea for a movie, well, if that's not in the cards to do it, doing a comic book is a good alternative for that. It's visual. It still involves storytelling. I mean, even in a comic, you can write down what's going on in someone's head the same way you can in a book. And, who knows? Hollywood is not shy about going into the realm of comics now and, picking stuff up, and they say, hey, this is really cool. Let's do a movie of it. So if you want to see a movie made of an idea you have, put it in a comic book. And who knows? Hollywood may come calling and say, hey, we'd like to back this. We'd like to see that get made. So that's certainly an alternative. And I mean, comics, the genres and themes is so vast. I mean, you could have a high school drama and put it in a comic.
So let me also speak to the idea of franchising that Tom spoke about. So for me, when we started, we had an interesting track too. Once we started creating the comic and we released it digitally and started getting feedback on Facebook and started to get encouraging comments, it wasn't long before we realized we had it to go out on tour, so to speak. So we started to do conventions, and it's been really interesting and fun for us to meet people like yourself. And so you were saying that discovering us, it's a little bit of a different backstory. So what we discovered about ourselves when we went out there is everybody was promoting their artistic ability and there's some amazing artists out on the convention circuit. We're basically, promoting Agent 122, the girl. I mean, we're really all about her and her story, and we're not distracted, I'll say, with our talent or our storytelling. We're just focused on her. And if you buy into her, then you get everything else that we want to do. So that became our main focus. And I got to tell you, Tom and I, we have weekly meetings and stuff about where we're going and what we want to do. And it's sometimes hard to stay on track. And it's good that there's two of us because we remind each other fairly often when we see other toys and other candy in the candy store, to stay focused on her as a character and her story, because there's so much great story that we've laid out, and I'm really excited about where we want to go with her, and that's what we really need to do.
One thing I want to talk about a little is actually the story itself, which we haven't really touched on. I know for me, I tend to be a sucker for the stories where they're dealing with, a lot of times like artificial intelligence and lost memories and stuff like that, which a lot of Philip K. Dick stories deal with, what is reality
It's
and
one of my favorite writers.
yeah, and
Me too.
what memories are real, what aren't. Now, Agent 122 isn't an android. I didn't know that when I picked up the book, but it does deal a bit with the mysterious past, where she's going to be discovering who she was before she was Agent 122. And
Yeah.
that always hits a sweet spot for me. So I'd just like to ask you guys, what are some of your inspirations that led you down this path and said, well, this is what I really like about this kind of storytelling?
Well, what's really funny about that is we talk about our inspirations a lot. We never actively contrived anything that we do or write or say in the story from a this or a that, but we kind of reverse engineered what we were making and discovered what was influencing us. And it's funny that one of the big ones, and Angelo's with me on this, was the new Battlestar Galactica series. For a lot of reasons, and one of the biggest ones is that the world, though people have their opinions, there are no black and white hats in that show. The world is gray, everyone is gray. Yes, the Cylons dropped nuclear bombs and tried to wipe out humanity, which is clearly not a good guy thing to do. But when you see that they're a very layered, textured, complex species and not just a bunch of mindless killer robots, you really got to see a lot of the nuance of the stories that they were telling, and how you could have 5 people watch any given episode, and you're going to get 10 different opinions on what it actually means, what actually went on, who was right, who was wrong, what were they trying to say. But the other one, and Angelo can speak to this better than I, is that David's favorite show, and his biggest influence, correct me if I'm wrong, Angelo, was Stargate. Isn't that right?
That's correct. And then and for me, it's sci-fi shows, any sci-fi movie like Ex Machina, where or RoboCop, where the protagonist is lost. Like the thing that attracted you, Eric, to the story is also attracts me. People who have lost memories and don't quite know who they are. And so one of the great things about the three of us working together is that we all kept pushing each other to satisfy our own individual desires for what turned us on as readers or viewers. So we were constantly butting heads, but in a really good way. So if Tom brought an idea in and then David and I shot that idea down, I had actually designed a rule whenever we were working, which was if any of us shoot an idea down, it's not 2 against 1. It has to be 3 unanimous votes before we can move forward with an idea. And this was a really great thing that we decided to agree upon, because sometimes a thing would come up, and actually one of my favorite aspects, which I can't talk about yet because it hasn't been revealed in the comic, concerning Agent 122 was a product of one of these meetings where Tom came to us with an idea, and I didn't like it. I think David kind of liked it, but because of this rule, we had to think. And I think 20 minutes later, after throwing so many ideas out, I or something came up and I said something and everybody went, "Oh my God, that's it!" And we jumped on that, and that's a lot of how a lot of the story got written. But the funniest thing, going back to Tom, and Tom could talk about this, at some point Tom got so fascinated with all our influence, he actually made a list of all of the things that we were influenced, that 122 is influenced by, and he correctly states it by saying that we didn't use those things to make 122, but once we had a majority of 122 written, we looked at it and said, oh, this is like this and this and this and this. And some of the things on that list was like the movie Alien, the original movie Alien. Tom, what was some of the other ones you had?
The Matrix was clearly one. The one that I wrote down, which made them laugh, was 50 First Dates, the Adam Sandler movie.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Because the protagonist forgets who she is every morning, and in the early versions of 122, we actually had missions where she gets mind wiped every time. We realized that was going to get boring really, really fast. And so we only ended up doing it once in the comic. But
yeah, because I guess it could be. I guess that if you did that, it would be kind of difficult to really build the character when they're only going based on a short period of time.
Although they did it in 50 First Dates, and they also did it in Groundhog Day.
And the other one was Memento, the great Christopher Nolan film. That's the convention I was shooting for, but we realized it would get pretty stale. So we can make the point. Yes,
well,
this is what her life is over and over.
Confusing if you started with issue 100 and then went back.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Which is why we made an issue 0 instead of starting with an issue 1, because we wanted to show with issue 0 that this was a day in the life of Agent 122. This is what her reality is. So in issue 0, you don't know if this is her first mission or her 1,001st mission. You have no idea. And then when you read issue 1, that's when like the real story ball gets rolling. It's like, okay, this is no longer a day in the life. Things really start to happen.
Definitely looking forward to seeing where it goes. Now, it said here it was originally named Project Terra as an abbreviation. Can you tell me what Terra stood for, or will that give away something?
Oh no, it's in one of the issues that we have out. I believe it's a technologically enhanced regimented reconnaissance agent.
Okay, yep, I remember that now that you mention it. All right, so like I said, when I met you guys at Baltimore and was walking by, I mean, the artwork really, really grabbed me, and the art's done by Douglas Schuler. And can you tell me a little bit about him and how you hooked up with him for the project?
When we realized it was too difficult financially and physically to produce even 3 minutes of animation, we basically shelved it. And that actually went by like 2 years before we did anything, before Tom suggested that we do a comic or whatever. But even before he thought about doing a comic, he sort of asked me if I thought a live action would work. And at that time, I was totally against the idea of live action because I kind of always imagined her as an animated character.
I kept writing behind his back, by the way. I was still writing stories, and I tried to make a screenplay version, with fingers crossed that someday it would happen.
Yeah,
so,
but when we
I don't know if I ever said that. Sorry.
Yeah, but when we got on board with doing when we committed to doing the comic, so we had a little bit of a hiccup, and this is not uncommon for a lot of startups. This I learned after we had done it that this actually happens a lot. So we approached somebody who had a history in comic books, who knew how to do these things, and we basically met with him and basically put all of our eggs in one basket. We had tremendous amount of material to digest, and we had NDAs signed and all kinds of legal stuff so that we could protect our story and everything else. And this person went to town. They had artists, he had script writers and everything else. It didn't take long for us to realize that he wasn't as experienced as we thought, and he didn't provide us with any kind of quality that we thought we could present to the public. And we lost a year or 2 in development, and we had to basically start over. So at that point, we could have just stopped, but I don't even know now looking back why we didn't just say, screw this, let's just go back to our regular jobs. But we didn't. I think we felt really committed to Agent 122. We felt we needed to tell her story. Tom might even suggested, because Doug was my cover artist for my radio dramas, and he's also very well known in the Magic the Gathering circles. He did early Magic the Gathering, and I think his main character was Angel. He's very well known for that character, and but I've been working with him for 10 plus years on stuff. So I actually came to him and said, could you fix up this issue? Maybe redraw some panels and stuff. And he basically turned to me and says, look, I'd love to do this with you, but I would rather do this entire thing as a digital 3D comic and start over than rework somebody else's art. And I'm really committed to the 3D digital idea, and I think I could sell it. And I responded, like most people did, like, really? Is it going to translate? Is the emotion going to be? So he did a couple of test panels and sent it off to us. And the thing I immediately realized, which is something that happens to Tom and I a lot, we actually always talk about it. We always say the universe will tell us what's right for us. Because at some point, the creation that you make as storytellers, and I think this also separates us a little bit from other people trying to do similar, doing a comic book or anything else. Once you lay out the course of what it is you want to create, and it's got enough meat on its bones to have enough story there, at some point the child grows up. The story no longer is waiting for you to tell it what to do. It now starts to tell the creators what to do. This is actually one of the great things about Ex Machina, which is a playback of the old Greek story. Your creation starts to question its creator, and the creation starts to want independence, and the creation eventually kills its creator and moves on its own. So we had to start listening to our story to see what our story was going to tell us. And so when I saw the artwork, it all of a sudden made me realize that we had made full circle, that the animated character that we had started with was now back in front of us, only in a 2D and not moving version. And it was like the sweetest moment for me, because it was like I had that back, because I thought we were going to abandon that to do a quote-unquote comic book. And we realized we didn't have to abandon that. We just need to do a comic book that's true to our story.
Here's the thing about that, is that Angelo has been making music and composing film for a very, very long time. And I've been a voice talent for over 20 years. And at some point, I don't remember when, Angelo, we realized that, yes, you read a comic book, you watch a movie, you listen to a song, but it's still storytelling. And if the story is strong and deep and layered and nuanced and has themes and people and it moves people, whether you're talking to a microphone like I do for a living, or you're, playing on a keyboard like Angelo does, or composes music, writes on sheet music, or you're drawing a character, whether it's in a computer or using pen and paper or ink or chalk or whatever for a comic book, it's still storytelling. So we were fortunate that we were grounded already in the basics of storytelling. And no, we didn't have any comic book production experience, but we've been telling stories for decades. And it took a while for us to kind of figure that out, that storytelling is storytelling. It all has these themes and rules. And so what Angelo alluded to, the universal tell us, that's kind of the universal laws of storytelling and relationships and basic human emotions, and how people act and react to situations where they are, real in their kitchen, or conceived in a comic book or on a movie screen. So we just had to work on figuring out the actual conventions of making an actual comic book. And once we kind of figured out that track, I'll never say that this is easy. It's by no means easy on any level, but we saw a path and we were able to kind of follow that path, and the universe would kind of let us know whenever we kind of got off track, because we ask questions. We have production meetings all the time about this and that, and invariably one of us will say, the universe will tell us, and the universe is always right.
And so to continue on your question, so Doug deliver these panels. I immediately fell in love with it, but that's because I love computer game art. I love that look. And, a lot of quote unquote comic book aficionados poo-pooed the look. They thought it would never fly. But what we started to learn again, because our story is so strong, people were gravitating towards the art because the art actually supports the story. It's a comic book about a character in a world of science fiction, not superhero. So it doesn't look like a superhero comic because it's not a superhero comic. It's a sci-fi comic. It's a story that deals with technology and human emotion and the growing up of a young person into a full-blown adult making decisions for herself. So it kind of was a happy accident, and at the same time, it was almost like it was meant to be at the same time. So that's how the art came to be the art, which we're still actually worried about some of our future expanding the universe, because at some point we will need other artists, and that's going to be a challenge for us.
Yeah, and I was wondering about that. How long is Doug gonna keep doing it? Because I kind of feel like that kind of art style really fits it so well that I think if you went something overly traditional like even if it was a separate story arc, I think in some ways it would almost be jarring. We go to an animated movie now, we expect to see something along the lines of Pixar that's 3D, but the first time that a movie was done like that, it looked so different from the the classic two-dimensional animation. So there was like an adjustment period. But as you said, Angelo, with it being sci-fi and stuff like that, I think the artwork really, really complements the story you're telling. And I can't imagine how much work goes into the production of even one of these issues, because the covers are beautiful. Like the covers, you could do posters with that. They look awesome.
Yeah, well, we have.
We do. They're on sale right now. Yeah.
They're on sale. We take them with us to the convention.
But you look at the inside, and almost every frame on the inside is just as beautiful as the cover. So it's not one of those cases where so much work was spent on that presentation, but then what's inside is subpar to what that icing on the cake is. It's like,
right.
No, the inside is full of icing and goodies and stuff too. It's just as beautiful.
Right, we believe really strongly in that, and we do talk about that when we're at conventions and stuff. One of the things Doug wanted to do, and he actually had to twist my arm a little bit to convince me to move in this direction, but now that we've done it and that we're sort of married to it, we know for sure that he has to finish this arc. So this particular story arc has 2 more issues to go. The next one should be out within the month, we're hoping.
And that's issue 4?
Yeah, that's issue 4.
If number-wise, it's issue 3.
Right.
It's our 4th comic, but it's issue number 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
and then there's an issue 4. That's going to take us to the conclusion of the first arc of what this whole Angela and 122 and the attack on the ship. That whole thing gets concluded at the end of 4. Our plans then are to take it into a trade paperback and try to do wider distribution while we work on the next arc. At that point, I'm sure Doug would probably continue with us, but we do have to find a way to bring other artists that, whether they decide to continue in a computer model or not, has to still come close to a photorealistic look. And it's going to be a challenge, and we're not going to kid ourselves in that it's not. But we have not, even though look, there's been so many challenges along the way. I'm sure we could spend the whole podcast talking about our challenges. But
Right.
One of the things that we've really been good at is not compromising, and sometimes to our own disappointment. One of the things that keeps holding us back is that we want We have so much. Tom and I have not really consulted a new story idea in 3 or 4 years because so much has been written and laid out that we don't really have to. We spend all of our time guiding what the story is, where it's going and what's happening. And when we look at the future, we don't really know how we're going to solve that problem, but we're gonna figure it out, just like we figured everything.
The universe will give you the answer.
Exactly.
That's right.
So I'm sure you're going to ask about this anyway, but let me talk about our writer, right? So Stefan Nielsen. So Stefan got the equivalent of something like 30 pages that had all of this material on it, the characters, their backstory, and some backstory that we'll never talk about in our issues, which is what kind of led us to this idea of doing the special issue. We have so much story that will never actually come out in the comic. It's integral to the characters and to the plot points and that where the stories are going, but the story of the origin stories of these characters will never really be told. So when he got all of that, he really digested it. And one of the things that we're excited about as much as the art is his ability to take this very complex and layered and lengthy epic story and turn it into a comic script. And Tom and I have to guide it so that to make sure that he doesn't bring in ideas that don't fit in the world that we've created and that move the story along. But he's quite good. And then that script goes off to Doug. Doug turns it into those images. Then it comes back to us. We proof it. It gets text added to it, and then we release it.
Yeah, we got to give Steph a lot of credit because I wrote these 9 or these 20 4.5-minute episodes. Plus, we have a relatively thick Bible that kind of explains how the universe works and background story on all the institutions and the technology.
So now the way you guys do the writing, it's sort of like Tom, like you're doing more of like an outline, and then he's doing more dialogue. Is that kind of how it works?
Well, what happened was Angelo and I we look at the Bible and we look at all the arcs that we've developed, and we look at the scripts that I'd written in web series form, and then we turn that into like a 1 or 2 page or sometimes longer outline saying these are the parts of the story that we'd like to get in this particular issue. And then we trust Stefan to weave all that together. He's also created some of his own characters and introduced a couple of ideas of his own, but he has done a marvelous job of sticking with the core and the essence of the story in general in Agent 122 in particular. He hasn't felt that him and his ego has not felt the need to kind of put his thumbprints all over what it is to make it a Stefan Nielsen spectacular. His focus is trying to tell a good story. So he turns all that content that we present to him, he turns that into an actual script. So I have a lot of writing experience, but I'm not a comic book writer. He's a comic book writer. He understands the conventions of comic book script writing. So that's what we needed to bring him in. For, and he's done a fantastic job.
So, you said you have more issues coming out soon.
Yeah, issue 3 should be coming out within a few weeks or so as of this recording, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little bit different. We were talking about how it's a very long process to be able to create these comic books. We're not able to crank them out once a month, which is the expectation for most series. So we were tossing about is there something that we could do that would be kind of outside of that, that we could produce. Well, we're producing everything on our own, but that we could produce in a more expedited manner. So we decided that we're going to release an issue 1.22. So what it's going to be is a series of conversations, memos, emails, intercepted transmissions, and the inner monologues of some of our characters, along with some artwork that's going to be featuring, we'll call them pinups for lack of a better term, pinup art or poster art of all of the major characters in our story. And we will be using the fantastic artist Chris Enott, who you may have heard of. He's going to be doing all of these pinups. So we have already. I wrote all of the monologues and stories and emails and correspondences, and Chris will be doing the art, and Angelo is heading the production of this particular issue. We don't have a release date for it yet. We're still the scripts are locked now. We're starting the art part of it. That'll be starting pretty soon. But yeah, something a little different, and we're excited about it.
And I'll just say that the characters, this sort of takes place before issue 0, and it touches upon some of the things that we'll never really ever get a chance to talk about in the comic book. And this actually stems from, if you go back and if you go to our Facebook, there is actually a collection of images called a blog, right? Are they called blog, Tom?
Yeah, it's a blog.
So before we launched Agent 122, we did a bit of a awareness campaign on Facebook, which was quite successful, actually. And one of the things that Tom did at the beginning is he put these sort of short paragraphs together of some of the characters' thoughts and communications that were really evocative, and they really stirred a lot of imagination about what might be coming. And that all kind of got attached to our signature image of her, which is her standing, looking down with the gun in the right hand and the teddy bear in the other hand. And that got such a great response. But then when we got into the issues and they were out, then the story was here. But I always remembered how amazing it was to sort of read those kind of evocative conversations. And I said, let's do a comic book of all of that. You don't have to read issue 1.22 to enjoy the story, but if you do read it, you're going to find some really cool things.
And we want everybody to read it.
And I've always enjoyed those various guidebooks, like whether it was a tech manual for the Enterprise, or in the realm of comics, when Marvel was doing its first run of Transformers, they put out a couple issues called Transformers Universe, where all it was details and biographies on all the different Transformer characters, and I always loved stuff like that. So that'll be interesting. And it sounds like you're doing something a little more different than that, where there's actually some storytelling involved along with all the other bonus stuff in there. So.
Yeah, it's not like baseball trading cards where you're going to get their height, weight, and how much they can lift over their head. It's almost all inner thoughts, along with some really awesome art.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank both of you for coming on. This is the first interview that I've done for the channel, especially going solo on it. And it's Angelo Panetta and Tom Deere, co-creators of the indie comic Agent 1.22. And where can people pick it up, and where can they find you, and all that good stuff?
So the best place to get that information is the website, agent122.com. Links to all of the avenues to get our comic book, print-on-demand links. Everything you need to know is on the website. It's a portal to everything else that's connected to all things Agent 122.
You can also download the first 8 pages of all 3 issues at agent122.com absolutely free.
You're selling it on, I think you had said Indie Planet?
That's the print-on-demand service, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you offer it digitally through there as well?
So the formats that they exist online right now is print-on-demand. They also provide a PDF version, and then Comixology has their version, which is app generated, which you can swipe and it's do this wonderful slideshow experience. And if you enjoy the artwork, you read it in the Comixology app, it zooms into every panel. So sometimes on some comics, when you have smaller panels that don't get as much of attention, and you zoom into those panels and you see like it's not quite fully formed characters and stuff, and it's like, that never happens with our comics. So when you zoom in panel to panel, you're getting full-blown imagery and color and everything else. It really is a great way to read our comic. Then we have Kindle and Barnes and Noble tablet type of things you can get it. And then, of course, if you come and see us during the convention season, you can buy it from us.
Yeah, do you have any appearances lined up?
Yeah.
We do. Right now, we are definitely booked for Baltimore Comic-Con next year. We just signed up for Garden State Comic Fest in Morristown, New Jersey in 2019. And we're pretty sure we'll be at Terrificon, probably. We were there last year. We'd like to go back at the Mohegan Sun. New York Comic-Con, we'd love to return there. We've been there a couple times. And I'm missing one. Was it Eternal Con?
It was Long Island's
Eternal
Eternal
Con in
Con.
Long Island at the Nassau Coliseum. We were there last year. So, and as the dates get announced and we get approved, we'll be announcing those dates.
All right, so that is Agent 1.22. I urge everyone to check it out. At least visit the website if you want to know more. So I'd like to thank both you guys for being on the stream here.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.